Hello everyone, I am Srijana Khaling, Assistant Professor of Sikkim Government College, Burtuk. Hello everyone, I am Srijana Khaling, Assistant Professor of Sikkim Government College, Burtuk from Sociology Department. Today I am going to give a lecture on role and status. See, role and status is one of the important topic from the fundamentals of sociology, and it is a basic unit of sociology. So let's start with the lecture role and status. I am going to start with the definition given by few sociologists on status and role. According to Young and Mark, role is the function of status. And another definition given by Duncan Michel, a social role is the expected behavior associated with a social position. Now see, these two words, role and status, is some very much interrelated to each other and cannot do without each other. Okay, now you can see in the definition itself how Young and Mark has defined the role. Role is the function of the status. Now whatever the status you hold, okay, you have to play your role accordingly. And another definition again, he says a social role is the expected behavior associated with a social position. Again, social position means your status. Now let's define status. According to Ralph Linton, status is the place in a particular system which a certain individual occupies at a particular time. Okay, now see the status. An individual have their own status in a particular system. Now see, a society is run by a social structure, and each and every structure maintains a system. Now we have to live within this societal system, and each and every individual holds their own status within this system. Okay, so individual occupies certain status within this particular system at a particular time, and accordingly they have to play their role again. Another definition is given by Morris Ginsburg. According to him, a status is the position in a social group or grouping, a relation to the other position held by other individuals in the group or grouping. Since individual cannot survive in isolation, so they have to be in a group. They can only survive when there is a group, and the smallest unit of a group is a family. Let's take an example of a family. In a family also, each and every member has to play their own role according to the status given to them. And it is again a relation to the other position held by the other individuals in that particular group, in a particular family. Then let's say an example of a husband and wife. Okay, wife has to play a certain role, which is again to the relation to her husband, which husband is holding the other position next to his wife. Okay, now let's move on to the next slide. Nature of role. Okay, let's read out those points. First one, role playing is obligatory for all the members. Yes, it is obligatory or compulsory in nature. Certain roles are obliged. You have to follow certain rules and you have to play certain roles according to the status given to you. For instance, when an individual take a birth in a family, okay, he or she holds a status in that family as a daughter or as a son. Now that individual cannot say that I don't want to play this role. So it is some kind of obligatory in nature that an individual, if has taken birth in that family, have to follow or have to play a role according to the status given to him or her. Next one is some roles are shared by a great many people. Now see, even the first point, which one was obligatory in nature. Okay, now being a daughter, it is not played by only a single person. Like for instance, let's take my example. I am daughter to somebody. That doesn't mean that I'm the only daughter of this whole country, or whole or state. No, each and every individual playing a role of a daughter, and it is played by great many people. Another example I can give you is, again I'll give you my own example. I am playing a role of a teacher, okay, and I'm teaching sociology. Now that does not mean I am the only person who teaches sociology in the entire world or the entire institution. No, even in our institution where I teach, okay, there are few faculty members who play this role, who teaches sociology. Likewise, there are many other subjects who is taught by other teachers, but their role is a teacher again. So it is played by great many people. Many of them can play a role of a teacher, given a status as a teacher. Now next point is, some social roles are enacted by one or comparatively a few individuals at a particular time in a particular place, which is very much opposite to the point which we discussed right now, just before I read this point. Many of the role was shared by great many people, but out here they're saying that many roles are as such, or many statuses are as such, where only an individual or very few individuals can play those roles. Like an example, you can take an example of prime minister. Okay, prime minister of any country, like prime minister in India, Sri Narendra, our prime minister Sri Narendra Damodar Modi is playing a role of prime minister in India. So he can play this role at a particular place and in a particular time. He cannot play a role of prime minister in any other country at this point of time. And another is the ministers. Another is the ministers or chief ministers. There are only few individuals who can play a role of chief ministers from each state. Okay, let's move on to the next point, that is, some social roles may be assumed voluntarily. Now see, voluntarily and voluntarily is everybody knows what does that mean. Okay, now out here, voluntarily rule means if it is not obliged to you, it is not kind of no compulsion. There is no compulsion to follow certain social rules. Like for instance, if you are an animal lover like me, okay, then you can always choose to join an NGO where we can help animals, and it is not something forced. Nobody can force you to join certain NGOs. Okay, so it is voluntary in nature. But unlike this, another point is, many social rules are involuntary in nature. Now certain rules are involuntary in nature. Okay, now see, this point is very much similar to the first point. Very much similar means it is almost the same. Okay, involuntary means where you don't have any choice. You have to take up this role and you have to play certain roles which is obliged to you. Another point is, roles are not performed 100% for the fulfillment of the expectation. Of course, if an individual is living in a group, so each and every individual within that group has certain expectation towards an individual or towards you. Okay, but it may but it is not that everyone will fulfill 100%. Everyone will perform their 100% and fulfill their expectation. For instance, let's take an example of small unit, that is family. Okay, if a family expect their child to be very studious and very good in studies, okay, but their child may not do very well in their academics, so that means the child did not perform 100% for the fulfillment of their expectation. Likewise, even when we discuss about the teacher student relationship, teachers have certain expectation towards their students, that students should be very studious, should be attentive, and should come regularly. Okay, but within but each and every individual or each and every student may not perform 100% for the fulfillment of the expectation. Like out of 100%, only 20% may do so, but 80% of them may not perform their 100% according to the requirement or the expectation which is expected by their teachers. Likewise, it is vice versa. The same thing can happen when students will expect 100% from their teacher, but teacher may not perform 100% according to the fulfillment of their according to the expectation of their children or students. Okay, now another is changing concept of role. Yes, it is changing of concept of role, because it is not rigid in nature. An individual's role will change, okay, in the span of time. Like for instance, let's take an example of the students. Okay, right now a student, they are taking up course of BA honors or MA or MBA, or any other technical courses, but they may not remain student forever. Okay, once maybe they will join, they will join new government jobs or companies or institutions, so accordingly their role will be changed. And once they are in a family also, if an individual is a daughter or a son, they may not remain the same. Okay, along with that role, the other roles will be added. Okay, so the role will change. Another is limited field of operation. Now, what do you mean by limited field of operation? Okay, every role of an individual place has its own limitation. Okay, they has their own limitation, and the role has to be conformed within it. For example, an officer, okay, has a role to play in the office, but when they come back to their home, or when they reaches their family, the role of the officer will be ceased, or he may not remain the officer in when he return back to home. Okay, now let's move on to the next slide, that is interrelationship of role and statuses. Since I've already told you that role and status is interrelated with each other. Okay, a status is simply a position in a society or in a group, and a role is the behavioral aspect of that particular status. So see, each and every status has their own role to play. Statuses are occupied and roles are played. Okay, status, we occupy certain status, and according to that status we have to play. Another is role is relational term counterposition. Now what do you mean by counterposition? Now see, each and every role has a counterposition. An individual play a role of vice versa with the another person's role, which is attached to the which is attached in a counterposition. For example, teacher and a student. Where there is a teacher, there has to be a student. If there is no student, then teacher does not exist, and if there is no teacher, the student won't exist. So that is a counter position. Even in a matter of the advocate and client, in a matter of doctor and patient, so these are all the counter position which is in a relational role. The role is played in a relational term. Third one is role and the status. In a way, point out the divergent interests of the two sciences, social psychology and sociology. Now see, this two area or this two field focuses on the role and the status, but in their own way, okay. Like social psychology studies role and status from the psychological point of view, whereas sociology sees from the societal point of view. Like on the individual differences in person's ability, talent or behavior can explained in a sociology in a psychological manner, and maybe the status which is hold within the society, or the society or the societal norms, or the societal rules and regulations which is made by the society, and how an individual have to play their roles according to the status or the prescribed certain certain prescribed cultural norms. That again comes under the sociological understanding. Another is both the status and role are dynamic and constantly changing. This is very easy. Easy means I've already explained that social roles are dynamic. Yes, an individual can play certain multiple roles at a time. For instance, an individual can be an officer at his office, but at the same time he or she can be husband or wife to someone else, some other individuals, or he or she may be daughter or a son in a family. So it is dynamic and constantly changing. Obviously, when you are in office, you'll be an officer. When you're in institution, you'll be a teacher. When you come back to home, again you'll be a daughter to someone, a mother to someone, or a wife to someone. That's why it is the social status and role are dynamic and constantly changing. Okay, now let's move on to the next slide, that is types of role. First one is role set. Now role set means it is a set of roles, okay, different forms of roles, okay, like different forms of role, or a role set is to identify a number of multiple roles attached to a single status. Likewise, which I gave you an example of an individual, or let's say, and let's give an example of a student. A student is playing a role of pupil. Okay, student is playing a role of a friend in that among that group, or a student is playing a role of being a user of the library, or he or she may be in a college team. So out here we can see that multiple roles played by an individual, that is role set. Another is role behavior. It refers to the way in which a certain individual fulfills the expectation of his or her role. Now see, each and every individual, right here they are talking about the behavior. So each and every individual have their own perspectives, have their own behavior or nature, or whatever it may be, personality, okay. But all the individual may not or may fulfill the expectation of his or her role according to the status given to him or her. Now see, according to T.M. Newcomb, he has defined role behavior as: role behavior refers to the actual behavior as distinct from the role itself. That means your actual behavior, whatever the actual behavior you have, the perspectives or the personality you have, okay, it may be distinct from the role given to you according to your statuses. For example, I have given an example of a role of a teacher. Now see, role of a teacher. Now teacher is has to be something, a kind of a very ideal person, or a kind of a, where student can look up to. So expectations would be very high. Teachers has to be punctual. Teachers have to have to be very good, or they have to have certain good habits, everything where students can learn from him or her. But it but the actual behavior of the teacher, okay, may not match with the criteria which is, or with the prescribed role which is given to the teacher. An individual, for instance Mr. X, okay, may not be punctual, or don't like to wake up early, but still he or she has to do it, because the role of the teacher has to be punctual in nature. Okay. Another is, I can give you an example of, yeah, the status of an engineer rank above all, or the above than of the foremen. Okay, the engineer's role includes the expectation that is that he tells the foreman what to do, but the role behavior of engineer may vary considerably. Okay, like for instance Mr. X, again an engineer, gives specific order and in a very pleasant voice. Okay, that may be it is according to his behavior, because he may be very patient, he may be very good person, or maybe very soft spoken. That's why when he give command or order, he may give it in a very pleasant voice, while the another engineer, which is Mr. Y, okay, may give very general instruction in a very harsh tone, and it is going along with his behavior, or how actually how he or she is in his or her own real life. Okay. Okay, and again the continuation or the further explanation of the role behavior. First one is, it depends on the effort that one puts in an occupant of the status. Okay, now it is completely on an individual. Okay, he or she may or may not put proper effort in that direction due to some of the other reason. Okay, likewise I've already told you that if there is 100% students and only 20% of them are doing well, that means it depends on their effort, how much effort they are putting towards their role. So it will vary from one person to another. Another is same role, but the variation will depend. Okay, another is, it depends on the feeling of obligation. Now see, role behavior depends on the feeling of obligation that one has towards the normative aspect of the status. For example, depending upon the strong or weak also affected by one's holding of the other position or status with the right and obligation attached to them. The role requirements of different status make it almost impossible for the individual who assumes various statuses to do justice to all. Individuals who somehow try to lead. Okay, now see out here what they are trying to say is, depending on the strong, weak also affect one's holding of other position status. Strong or weak obligation that individual may do his work and play his role as a father. Now see out here the term obligation is very important. Now they are saying the feeling of obligation because you are obliged to follow certain rules and regulation, and you have to play your role accordingly. You cannot deny that. Being a father or a mother, you cannot deny the position or the status that you are holding. Another is, it depends on the one's holding of other position or statuses with rights and obligations to attach to them. Now see, another is, role behavior is also affected by one's holding of other position or statuses with rights and obligations attached to them. The role requirements of different statuses make it almost impossible for an individual who assumes various statuses to do justice to all. Individuals too who somehow try to lead a balanced life make all lots of compromises with their obligation. Okay, now see, it depends again on the how much pressure or how much obligation that is attached to you. Now an individual will act accordingly. If there is lots of obligation, then an individual will have to sacrifice their own behavior, or for instance, let's take an example of Mr. X, who is a kind of carefree person, and loves to freak out, loves to party. But once he will get married, okay, and he will have his child, then he has to compromise, or he has to give up all his habits which was with him before, the behavior which he used to enjoy. Okay, so or whatever it may be. Okay, he has to sacrifice those, because once he is a husband, or once he is committed to a relationship, he is a husband to someone, or he is a father to his child, then he has to give up all his all his and all his things which he used to do before. Okay, so that is the with the right and the obligation attached to them, because he is obliged to play a role of a father or a husband, unlike being a carefree or a party freak person. Another is, it differs with the capacities of individuals, which is determined by both experiences and by hereditary. Okay, another is, role behavior differs with the capacity of the individuals, which is determined by both experiences and by hereditary. Now, experience, everybody knows what you mean experience. Experience involves cumulative learning in previous situations, and hereditary influence the effect that experiences has. Now, for example, let's take an example of a mentally deficient person cannot ordinarily perform well when the duty of any kind of duty, like a duty of husband, or any job what he is holding, or a teacher or advocate. On the other hand, a talented person may perform that very much better, okay, or they may perform them much better than an average man. So hope this is clear. Let's move on to the next point. Another topic, another type of role is role taking. Okay, role taking means that a person responds by putting himself mentally or imaginatively in the role of other person in order to regulate his or her own behavior. Okay, now see, out here in role taking, G.H. Mead has talked about the significant others and generalized others, and he says that it can be only understood in the two stages of every individual. Each and every individual has to pass through the stage, that is the stage and game stage. Only then we will understand the importance of the role taking. Like out here it is said that role taking means the person, an individual person responding by putting himself, an individual putting himself or herself mentally or imaginatively in the role of the others. Likewise, in the play stage, when we used to be very young, or when each and everybody has to pass this stage where a newborn baby or the infant has needs like those of foods, clothing, basic needs, and the mother sacrifices these needs for them. The child comes to depend upon her and identify himself or herself with her emotionally. Now that individual is attached to her and his mother individually. But in the course of time, he will also come to know, the child will also differentiate himself from his mother, and come to know that he is subordinate to the superior role of the mother. Now mother is superior, and he or she is the subordinate. Now he or she is trying to understand, or have already understood, that he or she is subordinate to the mother, who is playing a superior role. Then the child understand, okay, slowly and gradually, the role of the father and other members of the family. Now this significance, when he differentiates his father, his mother's role, and any other person who is within the family, or within the surroundings, that is known as the significant others. Okay, now will when they will be able to identify the identify the role of a particular person, then he or she may imagine herself or himself when they play. Okay, and they may imagine themselves to be a mother, and they will tell other friends to be father, or play a role of a doctor, where each and every child will be able to identify what are the roles of those persons, and they themselves imagine themselves to be in that person and play their role. That is known as significant others. Okay, and another is game stage, where he talks about the generalized others. Now what does that mean? Now see, again, the same stage, the child not only differentiates itself from the others, but also begins to act together himself from the viewpoint of the whole group. Okay, for instance, let's take an example of the game stage is football. Okay, an individual is not only identifying their own role in the football as a striker, but also will identify the other people, other friends role as well, where someone is playing as a defender, or someone is playing as a goalkeeper and midfielder. So that is the game stage, where an individual is not only differentiating itself from others, but also begins to act together, himself or herself, from the point of view of the whole group. Okay, and he highlights its significance in the process of socialization. Obviously, socialization is very important, portion in role taking, because an individual is socialized in his family, in his schools, in his colleges, in among the friends, from teachers, from their parents. So this socialization process, if an individual is given a good socialization process, or because each and every child will learn from them only, they will be socialized from them only, so they will act accordingly in the society in future. Okay, next slide. Next point. Next type of role is role making. Okay, now role making is given by Ralph Linton. R. Linton means Ralph Linton in 1936. Okay, it is the approach, the role theory derived by the Ralph Linton. Okay, and he says that it is functional in nature. Okay, role making is functional in nature. Now how we will come to know? Okay, out here he says that prescribed from the social culture and norms. Now what does that mean? Now see, each and every role is prescribed by the social